and we'll go live to Facebook. Just take one sec. I should say alrighty, Jonathan. That's what you say, and it seems to work when you say that. Yay! It always gets me to log in. I'll have to get the trick that I don't have to do that. Here we go. Over to you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Cassandra. Aren't we going to mute everybody first?
I muted myself, but not everybody else.
Thank you, Cassandra. Well, this is going to be a fantastic show today. We have Kristen Sanders, Bianca Stone, and Carrie Chappell, two of whom are coming to us from Paris, France. Unfortunately, Ariel Greenberg won't be able to make it. She has COVID and feels like hell. So, of course, we understand. We'll get her in another show coming up. But we're delighted to have you here today. And to get started, I'm going to ask my dear friend Jonathan Penton to read a poem, either of his own or from his huge archive of fantastic poems that Unlikely Stories has kept all over these years, which actually Jonathan founded in 1998. Unlikelystories.org, an electronic journal of literature and art. Since then, he's lent his editorial and management assistance to many literary and artistic ventures such as Mad Hat, the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Rigorous, and Big Bridge. In 2005, he founded Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 books of poetry a year. He's organized literary performances and performed himself across the United States. His poetry books are Last Chat from Virgin Press, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods from New Sins Press, and Standards of Saturday from Lit Fest Press, and the free e-chapbook Backstories, which you can download from Argotist ebooks. Hi, JP, how are you?
Thank you, Mark. I'm doing well. I will read someone else's poem today. I've been working on a nonfiction project, and I haven't been writing much poetry. The kind of nonfiction project that you don't read aloud until your parents are dead. So this is by Jeremy Nathan Marks, recently published at unlikelystories.org, Affairs of State. And the epigraph reads, "It is an association that promotes a way of life." William O. Douglas. When Hades ran for governor against a citizen farmer, Persephone came forward and called him her kidnapper. When Athens asked for proof, Persephone pointed to winter. Hades said, yes, it was true. Persephone had lived with him, but it was her curiosity which brought her to the underworld. Then why am I forced to come back 6 months out of every year? Persephone asked. Hades replied, the rules are rules. Anyone who tastes our fruit shall remain. Consider 6 months above ground a bargain. Persephone's mother, Demeter, did not know the reasons for her daughter's absence, so she cast her vote for Hades because he was the candidate with experience. Daughters shall not cause their mother grief, the priests say. Persephone is at fault. She shows no restraint, and the will of the gods is absolute. Persephone insists she never tasted the fruit. That claim comes from my cousin, Ares' son, a known liar. To which Demeter replied, Ares is my nephew, and though I despise him, he has royal liquor. So do I, mother, so do I, Persephone replied. Yes, darling, Demeter agreed, except in matters political, where men are more diabolical, which is why they retain the right to husband the affairs of state. Okay, that was Affairs of State by Jeremy Nathan Marks. And next up, we're going to hear from Cassandra Atherton. And I don't know where that, can you all hear that? I think someone's mowing outside. It'll be all right. Cassandra Atherton is an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. She is currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. I've seen it, it's wonderful. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry and introduction in the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She is commissioning editor for Westerly Magazine. Cassandra, will you read for us today?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I'm glad to be back. I've had a few weeks off, so I feel a bit rusty. Okay, here's my prose poem. I go down on you in the back row of a Qantas flight to Las Vegas. The seatbelt sign has been extinguished, and I lift our shared armrest in the darkness while you adjust your blanket. People on either side are watching movies or dozing as you unbuckle your belt. The blanket is a warm cocoon. You arch, and I can't see if you have your eyes closed or if you're staring straight ahead at the blank television screen, but your left hand is on my right buttock, and your fingers are drumming a familiar rhythm. From under the blanket, I think I hear you say I have arrived in your life like an angel. But later, when I ask what you said, you tell me they were winged words and I should forget them. So I am going to read something I have missed reading while I've been away, and that is Mark Vincenz's bio. So please join in if you know parts of it. I'm sure you've missed it as much as I have. Mark Vincenz is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 20 books of poetry, including more recently Einstein Fledermaus, The Little Book of Earthly Delights, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness, There Might Be a Moon or a Dog, 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, which is forthcoming from Spite and Diver, and The Pearl Diver of Irunmani, forthcoming from White Pine Press. An album of music, ambience, and verse, Left Hand Clapping, is forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincenz is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from, everyone knows this one, German, Romanian, and French. He's published 10 books of translations, most recently Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz with White Pine in 2018. It was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker Book Prize in Translation. His translation of Klaus Mertz's selected poems, An Audible Blue, is forthcoming this fall from White Pine Press. And I think he had it up, the cover of it up on his Facebook, so please go and check it out. It's lovely. He is currently working on a novel, a very brilliant novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincenz is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has, this is my favorite bit, he's lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, where, drum roll, there are more broad-necked root borers, eastern Hercules, and fungus weevils than people. I think I should have pre-read that one and practiced it, but I didn't do too badly. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Cassandra. This is the opening of my book, Station H2O, and it's just a one-page, it's part one, Sandstorm. There are wisdoms to be had everywhere. There are many heads of philosophy schools. One squats on his chair and extols the virtues of your exoneration. Walk to 26 Station Road, he says. Ring the doorbell 3 times and wait, he says, adjusting his turban. And don't forget, he says, your feet need to be planted firm in the dirt. Imagine you were giving birth. Imagine you could see the crown of a head coming forth. And yes, there are always mouths to be fed, and feed them we will, raising fish from the rivers and crabs from the sea. You see that person who has just died, he says? He entered his wife's ear when they were first married and never came out. He's still in there, he says, laughing so hard, his head wobbles. You wish to see the true state of religion? Well, look into your face, you'll find it there. And he chuckles again, pouring himself a mild green tea sprinkled with yellow petals, then turns away from me and stares into the river flowing with dead bodies and jerking crocodiles. And now I am delighted to introduce our first reader tonight, Kristen Sanders, who is the author of Country, a finalist for the 2015 National Poetry Series, and 2 poetry chapbooks, Orthorexia, and This Is a Map of Their Watching Me, a finalist in the 2015 Boat Chapbook competition. Kristen's poetry has been recently included in Prose Poetry, an introduction, and is forthcoming in the international anthology Alcatraz from Gazebo, Australia. Originally from Santa Marta, California, she is currently based in Paris, France. Welcome, Kristen.
We need to unmute her.
Yeah, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
I did it. I unmuted, right? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Cassandra and Jonathan and Mark, for having me. It's so nice to be here. It's my first Zoom poetry event. And my mom is here. Hi, Mom. I think this might be her first time ever hearing me give a poetry reading. Okay, so yes, I'm here in Paris, France for just 1 year on a visitor visa. And before the pandemic, I was a digital nomad, which means I was traveling all around and living in different places and working from my computer. So I'm going to read a couple digital nomad themed poems tonight. Cassandra and Jonathan, how much time do I have? Is it 10?
You've got it a bit longer. So yeah, somewhere between 12 and 15, something like that.
Okay, cool. Let me make sure I don't go over. Okay, so one of my chapbooks is called This Is a Map of Their Watching Me. It was a finalist in 2015 with Boat Press, selected by Zach Schomburg, which was a real big honor for me. And unfortunately, Boat Press, I think, has sunk. So it's a chapbook that's available online. I don't know if it's still available online as a free PDF, but I'm hoping to expand it, or I've been working to expand it into a bigger manuscript. The title of the manuscript right now is The Book of No Images. So it's in 2 parts. So I wanted to read quickly 2 poems from the first half of the chapbook, which are from the original chapbook, This Is a Map of Their Watching Me, which was written around 2009 and published in 2015. So the first poem is called Falling or Playing Dead or Lying There or Wrapped Up or Mummified or Making a Sign, a Symbol. I was busy being classified. I was busy being looked at. What about all the other bodies? Can we examine the other bodies? I wanted to rely on some trauma to explain it all. All of the other women were worse off than me, but I kept on being never not enough. What about all the other bodies? Where did they go? I was busy making myself look one way for them to look at me in another. When they walked into the room, I remembered the color of old wine poured down a silver sink, the smell. When I saw blood, I remembered trees. Men brought flowers. I brought what they took and I gave it. I'm looking for the other bodies and their traumas. This is so embarrassing that I cannot remember the color of their eyes. And then I have another one that I'll read. It's called, They Always Want Me to Look a Certain Way and I Am Only Happy When Pleasing Them. Which means I must erase my mind, which means I must fill and empty and erase. Which means I must be fill and empty, they are fill and I accept and empty. Clean it out, clean it. Which means want less, take less. I have to, which means a certain thing for them. I do even if and who are they, which means I must. I, which means they, because they said so. What do I have if not their approval? Which means I must. Was I sitting there looking the right way? Because if I was not, I must clean it out, which means there was something there before them. They thought to buy me a look and it stuck. It sticks on me, it must. If I do it right, let it stick and fill and empty it afterwards, it will be clean for them. I must. If they like the look, the pose, the yes now, I can have more, want less. What luck. This is me making a way in their world. I am moving my feet where my mind was. Look at what might happen. Look at all these little thoughts on the floor. So that's the first half of the chapbook. This is a Map of Their Watching Me. And then the second half of the chapbook is called This Is a Map of My Performance Under Their Eye. And it's a little bit, so those poems, those first 2 were written in 2009. These next 2 were written in more recent years, the last year or 2. So I'll start with this poem titled On Being Single at 37, by which I really mean not married. Oh God, the poems I wrote in my 20s. All I seemed to have were holes. Power leaked from me like a sieve. My own power, I mean. I cleaned up what was spilled from men touching my heart. I said what I needed to say and then didn't need to say it anymore. Years later, almost 40, I feel more like a boat or a balloon. Buoyant, weightless, the holes plugged up, the whole my own little kingdom. No one enters unless asked. Lovers come bearing gifts. I sacrifice for no one. I steer. Look at me, a woman, when I am speaking to you. And then I want to, so these are also still in the manuscript, and I also want to give a thanks to Cassandra for publishing these in Axon Journal very recently in your travel issue. All right, so I'll read a review of my Airbnb in Avignon. So again, these have to do with travel, with kind of finding your power as a woman in her late 30s, 40s, and travel, I said that already, and being a digital nomad, right? So bouncing around different places, kind of having all the freedom in the world, which is sort of what I've been obsessed with writing about lately and experiencing in my life. A review of my Airbnb in Avignon. The building clicks at night. I was sad here. The windows open wide onto a quiet, safe street. The kitchen has every cooking tool you'd need. I only ate cheese and tapenade on baguettes. That the frame of the mirror above the mantle is painted the same color as the wall pleases me. The owner's son, in his 20s and thinking I was younger than I am, brought me a houseplant. I stayed 1 month. It was more space than I needed. The muted blue-gray paint, chalky and calm, soothed me at night. I often slept till noon, then crept out for cold afternoon croissants. I stayed awake until the early morning hours. I did not write, but the chair, moved into the afternoon sunlight streaming through the open window, is perfect for writing. It was autumn. Please forgive me for not loving the way a woman should, for being here alone, for loving so much and yet so little of the world. I hope to return. Okay, thank you. So, the Nomad's Lament. That I have to choose one country, that I am expected to pick one love, that one city is imagined to be enough for me, that I shouldn't want to fuck the entire world, each man and each woman, seeking out those who might possess the mathematics of making me come. That devotion to one career in which I am expected to succeed should satisfy me. I know what I do not love. I know also why the Greeks loved their gods, the whole lot of them, their enemies and aches, impossible desires for mortals out of reach, their constant changing into animals, trees. And then, oh, thank you, everyone. Okay, so commitment issues. Can you tell I have them? I'm a nomad. Can we ask what your mom thinks? Oh, she's so supportive. My mom is great. She loves my work. She read country. Takes a big woman to do that. Okay, commitment issues. If I own it, my fear of commitment, if I hold it in my two hands, right at the heart level, and I look and you look, and it shudders at the shock of such piercing stares. And when we poke it as we do, it winces, collapses into itself, then throbs back out in defiance, as if it has something urgent to say, like an asshole, not a euphemism, like the literal assholes in those videos, you know the ones. And we talk about it and try to accept it into our lives, mine and also yours. Is it possible to coax it into a metamorphosis, stick feathers into it, turn it into something winged, light and airborne, just about to fly, but somehow impossibly also staying put? And then since my boyfriend is on the Zoom, as well as my mom, this is a family affair, I'll read my poem that I wrote for Stephen. And then this will be my last one. Thank you guys all for being here with me. Let me turn off my timer so it doesn't go during the reading. Okay. Considering the end of the relationship. I'm at a Beach Boys concert with my mom and sister thinking of you. Thinking of how you and John Stamos are the exact same age. He looks good, a little younger than you. I Googled to see if he's married. He is. She is 35. I'm seeing May-December relationships everywhere. John Stamos, 57, married a woman 22 years younger. Their toddler is on stage wearing headphones. The Friends reunion reminds me that Courtney Cox's character dated Tom Selleck, who is 20 years older in real life. Their fictional romance ended due to their 20-year age gap. Ours is also 20. Today, Boris Johnson married his girlfriend, 23 years younger. I am looking at a stage on which a dozen men in their 50s, 60s, and 70s play instruments and sing and dance around. Some look more tired than others. Can you imagine singing the same song for 60 years? The Beach Boys formed in 1961. You were born in 1963, and so was John Stamos. Mark McGrath of Sugar Ray is on stage too. I had a crush on him in high school. He's 53 now, his face ruined with plastic surgery. Two things about an age difference relationship. It arouses me and it makes me scared. I understand how unfeminist it looks, like I need to be adored by an older man, and I do. Like I need financial care, I don't like to think I do. Like I have daddy issues, that too. I stopped believing in poetry a long time ago. I stopped trying to write poems with images and metaphors a long time ago too. I am at a Beach Boys concert thinking of you and our love, which has felt doomed from the start and drowning in difficulties, but lifted us up and made us laugh and made you feel loved and me loved. And the whole years of the pandemic, we celebrated having found each other, little fireworks bursting with joy, sizzling against each other. It was love, it still is, crackling electric neon light in the air, cascades of light, lots of loud, fun noise, and then the inevitable regular sky returns. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Next, we hear from another Parisienne, Carrie Chappell, who is the author of Loving Tallulah Bankhead, out from Paris Heretics in 2022, and Quarantine Daybook from Bottle Cap Press in 2021. Carrie's poems have been published in many journals, including Iron Horse, Nashville, Redivider, and Yamasi, and her essays have appeared in Diagram, Fanzine, New Delta Review, The Iowa Review, The Rumpus, and many more. She's also the editor and founder of Verse of April, and she lives in La Paris. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. I had to take my headphones off because they really block out too much sound. And I have to have a little bit of my own voice to read. Thank you so much, Cassandra and Mark and Jonathan for having me here for me, which is late night, but today. I'm really happy to be online with you all. And I do have Loving Tallulah Bankhead forthcoming from Paris Heretics. It will, I think, be out in September. And so I've actually chosen to read poems just from that manuscript, or that text tonight, since it feels so present for me and their final touches still being made. And I have another little element that I'm working on. So I'm still very much in conversation with Tallulah Bankhead. I don't know how many people realize who this person is, but living though I am in Paris, I'm originally from the Southeast. I'm from Alabama, and Tallulah Bankhead is a fellow Alabamian, a woman who lived many decades before me, and a stage actress. I think that was sort of her most sought career, but she had some film success as well, and then almost probably through her own devices and then through just herself being her, was, I think, more of just a personality in a way after some time, but really a woman who was interested in living boldly and bigly, and from the I would say 30s to 50s, was defying a lot of the traditional feminine standards that we had, and maybe still have. So she was a pretty bodacious drinker and other substance user. And she also was really open with her sexuality, probably, I would guess, maybe a bisexual, but not really using those terms at that time. But she's a really fascinating woman to me. And as a shy Southern woman, she was just the most attractive thing to be thinking about. And so I sort of needed to invoke her to try to get over and understand some of where I came from and some of where I've been going. So I'm going to start with what is the titular poem of the collection, and also serves as the collection's title. So this is Loving Tallulah Bankhead. Perhaps I wanted to write about her because at first I didn't like her. I saw her through my mother's eyes, which meant I feared her very countenance. Tallulah was a tramp, you see, could be smelled from the screen, a cocked cigarette roosting in silk, all her truth caught lying down. She was, no, a woman I wasn't to worship, not in the whatsoever, not in the heaven forbid. I was to be chaste as a cross stitch, yet her name wouldn't leave my head. It bounced around there through Alabama's lessons. See, I was to learn God like Helen Keller knew WATER, was to wreathe my neck in pearls, clutch my purse while politicians stood indoors, wrap my voice in prayer, or say Rosa Parks to drum up downtown constituents. I was to know all this righteously, to feel myself eyelet laced. Later, when I read the rumors that Tallulah had lain with Billy, had flexed and ruined herself, I understood why the white women of my state had said no to her. Why she was an artifact of the silver screen, but no darling Ginger Rogers, no bless her heart Vivian Lee. No. She had rummaged around in drug, sex, and party politics, defended too many Black men, refused her womb a child. She had given up all the good upbringings an Alabama girl could be so lucky to have, just to stick her feet in mouths of bliss and kiss Lady Day. Some days, I still can't bring myself to love her, Tallulah, this fox of a woman I've been chasing. She is my vixen, like the college girl I secretly wanted to love me, or to be, but knew it would surely flunk me, knew I didn't have the vixen's courage in vixen terms. This is what makes me hunt, hide, is why I borrow from Adrian Rich. This is what troubles my stare. I am a woman drawn to ruin. I will never glow for them. Here I can't be, can't love Tallulah, yet I can't let go of us. I whisper our names in the perverted registers of gospel gossip. This is how spooky I am, a woman made here from the women made here. I count the rings of shame in my jewelry box. I count the rings of shame in my mother's jewelry box. Honor in Alabama must be a sparkling shackle. I touch my heart where there should be a two-story, but I see Tallulah. This is my sickness, my two faces. In the mirror, I look at myself, turning myself against myself. I look at myself and turn myself against Tallulah, Tallulah against Billy, against real beauty. I am all mendacity. I live in fear of my own turning against me, calling me wicked, ruined. I hold the key to my inheritance. I turn the key to my inheritance. I touch my heart where there should be a sister, and I hear her turning herself against herself. Hear her, sick, among women, turning and turning, twisting their keys to fit the locks of men. Okay, thank you. I'm going to just move right on, I think. I guess maybe I'll say it now so I won't maybe have to stop between and work in the future, but some of these poems were very much written in Paris, so maybe not many that I'm reading tonight. They've all been refined here and tweaked, but there were others that started. I lived in New Orleans before this, so there are, not in the next poem I'll read, but a bit later there's some imagery, I don't know, even like a dish that I mentioned that is recalling that space and that culture, but it's all, for me, you know, it's slingshotting or sort of boomeranging back and forth from wherever the eye is kind of honing, and a South that's still kind of evolving in a love-hate relationship with the speaker and with Tallulah, and that it's really just a fantasy. It was so fun to write, in fact, to fantasize about this woman. Okay, so this is called Tallulah Sits Beside Me on the Banks of the Cahaba River, that's an Alabama river, and sneers, "What the devil's in this god-awful call to roll tide?" We are naked in costume jewelry. I've brought her to Fairy Rock, my old Girl Scout hiding spot, because I want to live with her here. She will be my evil flower, and I swear to you, I will be hers. The night is quiet, which is rare for Alabama. Nothing shrieks in the sweet gums except her question. Football is not my sport, and she stopped going on about baseball and Willie Mays. We want to fizzle. She twirls her hands through the praising ferns, and I watch aroused. Well, certainly Alabama isn't all mud puddle. Just look at me. Oh, darling, whatever chigger bit me, I bit back, she says. Then she cackles, and her clavicle looks as if it will unbuckle. She is a haunted house. When her bones come to rest, I look at her and smile, knowing the laugh is a yowl, a hurt she's been trying to drown for years, knowing that whether it is football cheer, prayer circle, or campaign slogan, we've both been thrown to the wolves. Lightning bugs marquee the air. My left hand flips from my thigh and lands at her side. I do not want to speak, so I touch her, put my hand to her heart. The night is cool, and so is her breast. I lift the strands they've laced about her. I want to unbind. Each pearl is a word, deluxe and dogmatic. I pull them off, all that we've let slip from their mouths into ours. We aren't their daughters. She pulls at what is at my neck. We shed all that is left and hold it out before our eyes. We drink our breaths, then we take their ropes, their glint and government, and lower them down, past the studious roots and gawking catfish holes, past snapping turtle sermons, until they fall from our fingers into the gag of waters. Okay, this is the New Orleans. For me, it's very New Orleans, but I don't know how much that hears itself. Tallulah wraps her fingers around my drink, and I wrap mine around hers, quietly as we wait for spirituality's spoon to deliver us to candlelight, and jealousy to cork doldrum right in the sipper. Our silhouettes are like two women fighting the same body, or maybe like one body fighting two terribly angular faces. Our legs swish under the table, and I feel like saying taffeta. It's then we separate, contemplate just how self-centered we can get, what with good grammar and a liberal education. All this at sundown, of course, in the shallows of the yellow kitchen, where my roux cackles louder than she can, and the burning butter is the smell of her hair. So we spray the air with our questions, walk the dim hall to go out to mock the moon. All we feel in us is the night, as in all we feel in us is a sea of terrible euphemism. As in the water is smaller and kept, as in they built moats around us. We sit there, mope, in our whiskey crisping critiques and wait for the men to turn to brooms, the women to swoon and whisper, and for our words to sink in with the sureness of how we fought for them. Our plots twist up our legs like Jasmine, and her fingers wrap around my drink, and mine around hers, so that we are woven, accomplice, outspoken in our silence, two women, two terribly angular faces. All right, where am I arriving? Thank you. This next poem is, it's taking a title from, I would say it's probably Tallulah's most celebrated in, box office celebration. It was an Alfred Hitchcock film in which she starred. It's called Lifeboat. I don't really think it's one of Hitchcock's most famous films, but for Tallulah, it was a big break, and she was a bit more mature by the time she filmed it. I just imported it. That's not true. There's a lot more going through my head, but the title, I think, was just sort of to signify that I was going behind the scenes, which I guess, in a way, I feel like the whole book is about a sort of behind the scenes of the women, and behind the scenes of Southern culture, and then also, I guess, the art worlds in which both Tallulah and the speaker are trying to kind of parlay into and understand how to be more themselves within. So this is Lifeboat. Her arms splayed across the tank rims like masts, her legs churning as bubbles wreathe her neck. In the quiet, she skips a question like a rock to crash between my thighs. What happened to your sexuality? Her lips fizzle with spit, turning the container into a deep fryer, my legs into milky potatoes. I think of my past in the present tense, faintly drawing the bathwaters where I once lowered my body into a porcelain enameled cistern. Happened? I puff as if to make air consonantal, as if I think I should continue throwing back what probes. With my left hand pulling the wet reeds of my hair, with my toes darning the drain, I fix on her eyes between the drapes of her hair. I swirl my tongue in the pool of plain speech, squint, lean forward. Tallulah, I say. When I was a young girl, I used to masturbate in the bath with a Happy Meal toy. She shivers. As if a shawl has fallen down her back, I shiver too. And she whoops. What in the hell is a Happy Meal? My eyebrows droop with the letdown. It's hardly a double entendre, not even a promise. My tongue swirls again in the pool of plain speech. Then I say, I used to run over my clit with a troop of monster wheels. This is what happened. And with that, I surge up and begin sloshing towards her. Tallulah, it was never mine. I was made to give it away to plastic America. And later, when the guilt of touching myself was drowning me, I prayed to be saved. Here, Tallulah stands herself. And, she says, voice rising like a cresting wave. God did not hear me, I tell her. Instead, that night, In my dreams, a gang of women came chanting, only for a man. As I finished my confession, I began to fall, but Tallulah swam up close, drove my head into the deep, then flung me up like a conch to meet the brine of her lips. And this will be my last poem. It's a short one of the collection. And though Tallulah was never a mother, I have thought of her sometimes as inspiring at least she has groupies, she has a posse, and I'm a member. So this is called Daughters of Tallulah. How we love to say the name of a woman and not a lady. Tallulah, Tallulah, Tallulah. We carol, as if we could enter it, a name for living, a name against forgetting. Mother didn't forget. She held on to all her teachings. See, each night we take to our beds, hold who wants to hold us. We are the living, not forgetting, rumbling, wailing. Yes, sweet Jesus, touch me. Okay, that's all from me, and that's some of Loving Tallulah Bankhead. I will be releasing it soon, so if you find me on social media, I'll make announcements. I've been really happy to have the support of Paris Heretics, and the collaboration with them has been just frankly outstanding. And the other element of the book that I haven't mentioned yet is that it's illustrated by my cousin, actually. And she's a fellow Alabamian, and there's just a lot of interesting and meaningful relationships for me in the book because of these collaborations. So anyway, thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Wonderful. And next we hear from Bianca Stone, whose poetry books include The Mobius Strip Club of Grief, Someone Else's Wedding Vows, and most recently, What is Otherwise Infinite from Tin House. Bianca illustrated the children's book A Little Called Pauline, with text by Gertrude Stein, and collaborated with Anne Carson on the illuminated version of Antigonic, well, you can tell me how it sounds later, a book of Carson's translations of Antigone. Her work has appeared in the New Yorker, the Atlantic, and the Nation. She teaches classes on poetry and consciousness in Vermont at the Ruth Stone House. Welcome, Bianca.
I'm not sure she's here, Mark. I have sent a number of emails, but unless she's under another name.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay, well, you're going to have to give me a second. Our special guest is still downstairs. So maybe you'd read one of your poems for a second, Cassandra?
Oh, look, I might read something from, I have Arriving at the Shoreline came in the mail, and I was very delighted to have a co-written poem in it. And I will quickly find it and read it to you. It's about eggs, because I do love eggs. So here we go.
All right, I'll be back in 1 sec, yeah?
Yeah, it's after Joe Brainard. Eggs. Once I ordered poached eggs for breakfast at New York's Malibu Diner, and they gave me 2 eggs in a cup with no toast. I ate them with a fork, dangling bits of undercooked white. Once you stole my egg prose poem, you abseiled it over a coffee cup and won a prize for it. Once I fed plums to your hens, but the broody one looked sideways as if it were an impossibly misshapen purple egg. Once you told me our love was an egg and our vows a sticky mess, but the next day you cooked me 2 perfect hard-boiled ovoids. Once we swallowed prairie oysters, fondly remembering Sally Bowles in Cabaret. Once you told me you were an identical twin, and I imagined your mother's egg splitting in half and your face smiling out from the left-hand circle. Once I bought wine simply because it said may contain traces of egg. Once I downloaded the app to track my ovulation, but I decided to go on the pill instead, each pill an underdeveloped ovum. Once you said your thoughts were scrambled, but soon produced ideas like glistening poached whites. Once a newspaper article stated that someone had fried an egg on railway tracks. Did the train bisect it perfectly like a razor blade, or did the vibration scramble it into a yellow and white stickiness? Once I saved up my cream eggs at Easter, but months later, when I peeled back their foil coverings, their centers were hard-boiled caramel. Once I read you the line from Macbeth about Lady Macduff's son being an egg, and you took it personally. Once you pushed back your plate of spaghetti in Lygon Street, telling me you could never eat carbonara unless it was in a special Roman restaurant. You took me there and smugly held up your plate of pasta smothered in golden yolks. Once you coddled me like an egg, such low heat and lazy caresses. Once during water restrictions, I used the egg timer in the shower. I reset it 3 times before deciding I'd been properly cooked. Once I made Welsh rarebit with self-raising flour and 3 eggs, and it puffed up like Hockseyes, the great wave off Kanagawa. Once the recipe said not to eat the batter because it contained raw eggs, but I ate a big spoonful, the traces of yolk like a gustatory golden ore. Once you kissed me so tenderly, your lips were like the softest yellow center. We remembered the avocado and poached egg breakfast at the old paper shop deli. Once you said my poems were like eggs, and I dreamed of sitting on each of them for 3 long weeks. Once you said that our intimacy was a half-cooked egg white, but I refused to follow your meaning. So yeah, this is in the wonderful Great Weather for Media anthology that's just come out and winged its way all the way to Australia, which is no which is huge, which is no small feat, because postage to Australia is ridiculous. So I think Mark back with our special guest yet?
He is. I think postage to Australia can only be afforded if you transport by butterflies.
That's a nice thought. It takes some time, I think, but a lovely way of getting poetry in the mail.
So I'm going to introduce our special guests tonight, Karina Van Burkum, who is staying with me over the weekend with her dog Beth. Mm-hmm. That way, yeah.
She's beautiful. And she's named Lady Macbeth, right?
Yeah, she's Macbeth.
Beautiful.
She's only 9 pounds, but really lives up to it.
And so anyway, Karina is an editor and a poet. She grew up in rural New Hampshire and finds herself returning to the woods. She enjoys writing about family, childhood, queerness, animals, and the wonderful places she's traveled and worked, including Greenland, South Africa, Slovakia, Peru, and Austria. She was a 2016 Robert Pinsky Poetry Fellow at Boston University, where she received the Hurley Prize in Poetry. And she has taught creative writing at Grub Street and Boston University. Her work has appeared in many publications such as Plowshares, 5 Points, Woven Tales Press, Beltway Poetry Quarterly, and the American Journal of Poetry. She received a Rising Award nomination for outstanding poetry as well. Karina now lives in Vermont, where she is the editorial project coordinator for the MIT Sloan Management Review and the co-editor of Spoke, a poetry annual based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Warren, Karina's book came out fairly recently, and yeah, I'm delighted to have her with us.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me here and at your home with your wife, Miriam. I'm having a wonderful time at this beautiful farm. It's even more beautiful than the bio makes it seem. So I am going to be reading a few poems from Warren, which came out, I think, in September of last year. And then I'm going to read a few new ones as well. And it is my instinct to go closer by going this way, but I now recognize it needs to be this way. So I'm going to see how that works out for me. All right, so the first poem I'm going to read is called Hunting Scenes in Films. Hunting scenes in films make me feel all powerful. I watch with happy hackles up as the high-res furrowed man brow cuts to red, close-up stag distress, another easy kill. But if I really hitched a weapon and mapped the estrus of local does, I would be wrecked with worry. Not only have I never hunted, never negotiated a peaked trigger, but how to proceed without movie magic. Without that agonal close-up that puts the eyes of simply everyone top of mind, not just mine. Will I know how sovereign to feel without it? Will I know I am the man? I couldn't stomach the big silence after my gunfire went out, the two flashing reports. And the next poem I'm going to read is called Who is Living Here? Dogs pour through the busted veins of Cusco, Peru. They come rotting and collect like an attic vase spilling sun-warmed dead wasps. The first torrents of life between waking fruit markets. The mutts will later clot up the roadside. And while vendors call passion fruit for sale, sweet papaya cheap, plagues of dogs either wail or sleep. And then I'm going to read this. I'm kind of going all over the map today because I did a lot of traveling maybe a decade or so ago, and many of these poems are a result of my international travels that I was lucky enough to do and sort of worked my way in the most random places. And this one is from Greenland. It's called The Residence of Narsak. Ravens weigh this vista down. You see 200, 3 at a time, and they are always bluer than you think they will be. See their heads rise from ready breasts, kitschy foul, as if the winter has dark teeth. A Greenlander told me the infant-sized ravens will keep punishing the rooftops, callousing their calls, casing the Arctic until they're done with us. They fly low, he said, to remember your face. And then this one, thank you. This is a little bit of a longer one called He Named Himself, and it's important for me to note that I'm talking about a bird called the lyrebird, which is in Australia, and it's spelled, yeah, Cassandra knows. Have you ever seen one?
I have seen one. They have them at all kinds of national parks and that here, and they are amazing at imitating noises from, oh, that's part. Okay, I'll leave it.
The poem is about this, but it's important for me that people know that it's spelled L-Y-R-E bird, lyrebird. Okay, so he named himself. Lyrebird, rumpled Australian ground fowl. He sings the song of a gas-powered chainsaw. He hears it every time a pig-cheeked forester cuts a flank of landscape, then mimics the brattle until it sinks. He named himself to lie, clacks and ticks like the strappy gear of a bird-watching troop. The men startle and disorient as lyrebird changes. He is now a thrush. Later, a car alarm. This one is good for causing scatter. He named himself because he knows his throat is different. His tail, too, the furies of feathers up behind, catching grime like a flu. His larynx is a syrinx, controlled like a tugged marionette, harmonizing with itself. His throat lets him be a thrush to a thrush. He named himself when scientists could not. Was he a pheasant? Partridge? Some grubby jungle fowl brother? They couldn't name him then and cannot find him now. He is lying bitter and hidden all over the Illawarra, mocking the clamor of his home. He feels smug inside his name, but smug birds are still birds. He lies without concept of the words. He calls himself liar, lyrebird, but cannot know, as he nurses the drag of a chainsaw's song, that his name is a small stringed yoke made to strum. I forget when I started.
That's okay.
How are we doing on time? Okay,
Yeah, you're good.
keep going. Okay. All right, this song is called Becoming Twins. This song, did I say song? This poem.
The song.
It's a song.
Yeah.
Could be a song. This poem song It's called Becoming Twins. Every night my children work hard to become twins. They seem to nearly congeal, put rocks in each other's little shoes to match limps, share an orange, 4.5 bright wedges each. If they could, they'd stitch themselves together. Real needles, real thread. I had to laugh when they asked permission. The blood on our animal baby's carpet would happily combine. When I wake up childless, am I relieved? Am I one of them? Who could be a mother who would help it? Who would be a mother who could help it? I eat my own 10 drippy wedges, ruined for love. Let's see, I had one more of this and then maybe the 2 new ones. Is that all right? Okay. This is a New York City poem for anyone who's New York City based. It's called The Whole Place is Moon Dipped. From the grimiest bar stool in the belly of a burrow, I say this city is a river. You say it's a sea. I say no, a river for its constancy, those slick coats in a row and the daily shoop of dreams dipping into manholes. At least a river has direction, you say. But my city is a pointless mass and I am a big animal caught in it. The whole place is moon dipped. I have learned to go with the swells, froth-topped, heady, heavy, heavying me. Trying not to sink looks like swimming. But I am ready for a wet hibernation, I say.
Who doesn't want a wet hibernation?
Nobody, no one that I know. And then, so those are from the book, and now I'm gonna pull up a few newer ones. So these are newer drafts, and I think I've shown no one, so.
Okay.
This is a spontaneous reading here. This poem's called What My Father Said. What can I say? My dead Oma's Dutch accent has never left me. I remember the way her chin shook as the words tumbled out. Enormous bass, enormous resolve. I still sing halloo with the loo drawn long, and it seems I keep her sad, twisty headspace too. Sometimes I wish I was sewn up into her. Sometimes I know that I am. Don't I look like her? Everybody says yes to be nice, I think. It is a laughable question because she was so glamorous. Although I was a preteen, I may be misremembering. I had to come back after my latest breakdown to the woods where it began. Oma would be coolly pleased with her son, my father, who looked like his father when he looked at me and said, "You are a lonely woman." And then, thank you. I like the thumb. This is like the ultimate, little yellow thumb. It's like in live action.
Yeah, well,
here.
emojis.
All right, the last one I'm going to read is called Spending Solstice Alone. Saturday, as an old friend sits like a Sphinx queen on the Daedalus roof deck, I pray that she too is not pregnant before me. Sunday, I finish the deck back in VT. In the middle of the night, under what is apparently called a strawberry moon. White blue porch paint spits onto the dark plants below. I howl, "This is my house and these are my things." Tuesday morning, 8 fertility clinic calls, feeling more than ever like a kid stabbing in the dark. The next 4 days become one long silent night of debauchery. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun to read.
All right, we shall move on with the show now, but first I want to thank everyone who was here today, Kristen and Carrie, and of course, Karina. Unfortunately, Bianca seems to have missed the appointment and Ariel's not feeling well. So anyway, we'll catch up with them later and we'll bring them onto another show. But now I'm going to hand the mic over to Cassandra, who's going to take over the open mic part of the show.
Yeah, we don't need anyone else because we've got the best open micers today ever. I've missed some of them. There's some new ones in the mix. It's all happening. So we've got 10 today, but I love that because we get such a kind of cherry bowl full of brilliance. So Karen is going to read first for us. And I always love Karen's poetry. So Karen, what do you got for us this week? You might have to unmute yourself. Unless I can find you and unmute you. Hang on. Here we go. Can you unmute?
Thank
Yay!
you. Hey,
Perfect.
and thank you for those nice words. And what a wonderful reading this has been. Wow. All of you, I'm just blown away. But I have a very short prose poem. It's called Drama. The way it roves, resolute, royal and roar, stick thin repair range, steady, rehash, restate, recast, scorched cortex smoldering on the shelf of my shoulders, repeat, rework, until steeped, I'm stuck, muck up to enough already.
Wow, loved it. Love the wordplay. I mean, it was so clever. It sounds so good too when you read those ones out. Royal and raw. Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for kicking off our open mic. The next person we have is Alison Grace Kohler. So Alison, I know that you are, I think, one of Carrie's friends, and I'm excited to hear you read. Can you unmute? Perfect.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful event. Really good to hear Carrie and Kristen tonight. I'm going to read something that I wrote almost exactly a year ago, but that I reworked today. Confession number 55, August 7th, 2021, cut up. To write because sky, explosion, slowly through morning, slightly transparent blouse, to write in a soft backed, nearing the end, ready to blame the pen. Now, an unequivocal believer, what will it yield underneath? Tiny tears above my right footbridge, tiresome poetry. Say yes to tea, make time to test for STDs, an apology. A feeling of banana chips, wanting to feel cherished. We are all crawling into the holes of our existence. Fingertips torn from copper foil. Bitterness. Don't give that space oxygen. When something is suddenly asked of you. Inking letters. Thinking by the window, phone scrolling, banging on the wall. Red and blue and yellow. Has the rain. Will the calm. Confession is stream. Backwards and forwards. The moment. Is it possible that coffee puts me to sleep? A numbing. What gives? My favorite way to do nothing. This is the nothing. Walk across the country, just the slowness. To see who has grown older. Look for bubbles of persistence. Are we the living hum of a refrigerator? The vision of another, their motor, there, to believe nothing, procreation, meditation, hiking across a new land, a life. The thickness of a pen is this, of nothing. Scrub the floor with these lines arc downwards. The weather isn't summertime, an ear, a dream, a vivid morning dream already, being alone, being a person, a barcode, a flight, afraid to get a PCR test, to talk to a computer, a package for retrieval. What a diagonal. What a curiosity. Thank you.
Wow, I hope that's part of a growing manuscript. If that's confession number 55, I hope they're 1 to 55 and 55 to 155. I love slightly transparent blouse and ready to blame the pen are two of my favorite moments, but that was a real tour de force. Thank you for sharing it with us. The next person that we have up on open mic is the very familiar face of Leslie, and she's going to read us something great like she always does. So Leslie, if you can unmute and share your wonderfulness, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Hooray.
I have a note, Cassandra, that says the host isn't allowing us to unmute.
Oh, that's annoying.
But now I'm unmuted. I don't mind giving up the control to you all. So anyway, God, this is also great. And it's particularly going to be difficult to follow you, Allison. I have 2 short poems here. And the first one's called Beyond Nostalgia. And there's a reference to a constellation in the southern sky called Apus. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right because nobody ever says it. Apus. And it represents a bird of paradise. And Apus means without feet in Greek. Beyond nostalgia. But we talk of the splitting and the mating and how Apus runs down the sky to meet the dragon. No feet, flying feet, after all, takes the risk, and the skies move. Unlikelier things have happened than for me to be moved by you. And then the second one that I'm reading here is called Next. And it was published in one of the alternative New Year's Day spoken word poetry extravaganzas, but I forgot which one it's in. So, but it's in one of them. Next Decade is actually what it's called. Before it was too late, she stored her flesh inside the nebula, carmine rinsed to remind her of the hour of the corpse. She requisitioned steel talons, kept the shine because it tickled her, then rethought the project and retrieved her sweet heart, hologrammed, multiply ready for the long year's work ahead.
Wow, thank you so much. 2 wonderful poems. The skies move me to be moved by you. So much great stuff in there for us to think about. Thank you, Leslie. You always do something wonderful for us in open mic. Indran is next. You know, Indran has a special place in Lit Balm. It's not quite the same without him. He's going to read something amazing. Maybe introduce it a little bit for us too, Indran, because I think you were talking about it at the very beginning.
Oh yeah, it's such a new poem, but and it's but all right. You know, Sri Lanka has been is in a terrible situation. There are almost 6 million people. Can you imagine? Almost 6 million people on the island who are malnourished or potentially malnourished because they have to cut at least 1 meal a day out of their day. So they're going on 1 meal a day or perhaps 2. But beyond that, there has been some positive developments. The rogue president, the war criminal president, has been chased out. He's currently in Singapore, biding his time, wondering when he can come back. His replacement is protecting him in a way. But this is all aside. The poetry I've been writing has been about this country, and I happen to write a very a kind of optimistic poem today, and I'll try it out on you. It's called To Survive, Even Thrive. My country will survive corruption in Parliament, arbitrary arrests ordered by the executive, bodies washing up at Galle Face at the Beira Lake. My country will survive farmers shooting elephants before shooting themselves as crops wither in dry seasons between uncertain and delayed monsoons. My country will survive too narrow roads, too many head-on collisions, arak and race hatred spilling from bars. It will survive because the Aragalaya has landed and is building the largest tent ever seen on the island, where a British clergyman once opined only man is vile. A miracle on Galle Face Green, a non-violent, inclusive, non-racial coming together. Yes, there have been miscreants, arsonists, frustrated and angry people who have burnt politicians' houses, who have toppled a statue of the Rajapaksa patriarch. But the Aragalaya is grand, forgives, persists. No matter how many plain-clothed investigators visit families of protest leaders, no matter how many truncheons beat protesters while they sleep, the Aragalaya is spreading in the diaspora as well. It cannot die. It will not let this miracle go. The chance we have now to finally put our house in order, to save our island, culture, and ecosystem, to turn to the rest of the world and say, if we can realize our lives and dreams on the island, we can do so everywhere. That's it. Thank you. So just a rough draft. Thank you.
Wow. If that's a rough draft, you can try all your poems out on us. That's for sure. That powerful anaphora, my country will survive. Thank you. That was really powerful, Indran. Thank you.
Thank
you.
The
next person we have is Tasneem, who has been with us before and read wonderfully before. So I'm excited to see her again. But sadly, my skills on unmuting people are leave a lot to be desired. Is Tasneem here? Wave your arm around. Yes, there she is. I just saw her. Sorry. Got my little gallery at the top. Okay, you should be able to unmute now.
Yeah, yes. Right now. Yeah, I did it. Okay. Thank you very much. It's truly a great treat to be here. Every time I come, I'm, what should I say? I'm floored by the beautiful poems of all the poets. Well, today I'm going to recite a villanelle form of poem, which is a French poem, all of you know. And this poem is from my second book of poems, The Floating Feathers. Okay, let me start then. Let's walk together, you and I. The world grows dim and dimmer with feeble eyes. Youth turns into a broken wheelchair. Let's walk on the desert together, you and I. The wheel of life rolls and turns. Time flies fast by. Medicines pile up high. Hair grows grayer. The world grows dim and dimmer with feeble eyes. Once full of laughter and merriment, now distant ties. Mornings are hazy with too much time to spare. Let's walk on the desert together, you and I. Afternoons are bleak. No sun shines in the skies, no melody of birds singing. Trees look bare. The world grows dim and dimmer with feeble eyes. Muffled voices amid soft sound of gasping cries. Let's be each other's forever to care. Let's walk on the desert together, you and I. Evenings come with stories told anti-clockwise. Sleepless nights abound, aplenty in prayers. The world grows dim and dimmer with feeble eyes. Let's walk on the desert together, you and I. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Everyone loves a villanelle. I love the hazy mornings you've got in there. I mean, I like most forms of poetry, but my secret is that I hate pantoums. So throw me a pantoum next week or something.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. We have the brilliant DeWitt. You know, you wait for him each week. You wait to see what he's going to pull out of the bag, if he's going to get a foundling out there, or if he's going to do a word play. Today, I believe I've had a sneaky peek and we might be getting a new foundling as soon as I can find him to read his foundling. There he is. He's clicking his fingers. I can see you. Hooray.
Okay. A foundling, if anybody doesn't know, is an attempt to take a piece of relatively famous prose and make it new by turning it into verse, epitomizing it somehow. It's really alchemy because it's taking gold and turning it into gold. The fun for the reader partly is to figure out what writer I'm talking about. This is called Purgatory. Why? When the Steve Kovic Quartet played at Vito's log cabin, as Steve himself liked to say, the joint really jumped. Piano, bass, tenor sax, and drums. To judge from the delight that swam in their eyes, they had no idea of what inferior musicians they were. Kovic, their leader, had been a professional for 20 years without ever quite learning his craft. He had spent the only happy hours of his youth in a trance of hero-worshiping imitation until one June night in his senior year, when the rest of the band stopped playing, the hundreds of couples stood still, and Steve Kovic felt the weight of all their rapture on his wagging, chilly head while he beat it out for 3 solid minutes. But the splendid crash of cymbals with which he ended that performance marked the pinnacle and ruin of his talent. Even now, there was a negligent grandeur in the way he took the stand, the way he frowned over the arrangement of sticks and brushes and hi-hat cymbals, and then peered out beetle-browed to ask if the spotlight could be adjusted a fraction of an inch before he settled down. Only then, once or twice an hour, did he give himself wholly to his work. He would take off in a triumph of misplaced virtuosity that went relentlessly on until it drenched his hair with sweat and left him weak and happy as a child.
Thank you. Read beautifully. Misplaced virtuosity. That's my favorite bit. What a tour de force. Thank you, DeWitt. Always a pleasure to hear you read on Lit Balm. Next, we have Ron, who is going to grace us with something amazing. So Ron, can you unmute? Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to do 2 short absurdist poems from my book Absurd. And I don't know if you can see it, but the cover is a painting by my wife, and it's an absurd painting. So here are 2 absurd poems. This is called Stashu. The mouth full of radio blessed the white rabbit's cashew for neutrinos, which wonder what heaven looks like. The vanilla flavored something in your eye landed in Detroit with Plain Jane. The prince died before the cat princess could arrive with sweet nothings. The reflection of sound worked it out of a marathon sweat episode for Hello Children at the end of the rainbow, where they found a pot of gold which was burned down by another maraschino heart baby. Gucci piggies held a levitation party to lay eggs down in the squeal. Dusting for fingerprints while floating on wishes, they found that life is like a bowl of mutated cherries. The year of the Bizarro monkey danced on air in the still life of Champ Sound. It's all black and white in Tinfoil Alley, not a black tie affair, So eat the radio and a soft place to land. Welcome to the island of blue raspberries. We're unveiling the devil and talking about popcorn music and the greatest hits of the decade. I'll tell you something. Julie filled in and she's seedless, sweating to the oldies with an unearthed potato. And the second and last is called Williams. The super Earth machined into maximum wind and fire in the energy orchestra's ritual of big business. The last legs of the regulars bought wild roses for the exit. While creatures danced with the silver girls, all the young people of today expanded the garden. A Geiger counter commanded your weather and revisited the bulbous sea, which wouldn't remember dying, but declared mud hut help in the Nick Night of Belgium. Defensively, I'm never going to fall more than enough into the bird songs, i.e. songs to fill the ghetto air, as long as you give me bicarbonate and a chicken, and as long as a jaguar meets a snake in the temple. Magnesium flares are impossible objects of desire for a creeper and a gnasher in the Arabica cortex of experimental African funk. I wash my hands of the whole new birth that is coming from all ends. The prophet began with a blessing, but once I awakened, it ended with the confessions of Dr. Dream and other curses. Mara's return led a marathon dream sequence of the little things that keep us together, like the prologue of a boy child. A Sama ink swine unites your nation of New York, London, Paris, and Munich. David Bowie reissues a CD bonus track. Thank you.
Wow, it must be fun in your house with your wife doing absurd paintings and you writing absurd poems. And, you know, if there's something in my eye, I hope it is something vanilla flavored because I quite like vanilla. Thank you for sharing those with us. We have our favorite trio. We have John Wessex first, followed by Cindy and Bob in their respective lounge rooms and kitchens. So can you unmute John? I normally just make you a co-host so you can do whatever you like.
Okay, here we go. Got it. Yeah.
Hey, what's on your top first? You've got a Boston top on, you peripatetic poet.
Yeah, this is the Improv Boston where I took some improv classes.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know what to expect as I follow the Enola Gaze path along the river. After departing the train in Hiroshima days before the nuclear physics conference, August heat sticks the shirt to my sweaty back. Guzzling bottled green tea and following a tortoise map, I navigate to the site of the bombing, passing shops, restaurants, and modern buildings along the way. Well-wishers have built statues and memorials, but I sent a hurt beneath the goodwill. Eventually, I arrive at the Hiroshima Carp Baseball Stadium across from the famous dome, Ground Zero. Circling the dome's skeletal steel frame, I snap pictures, click, wind, click. The peace bell's somber chime warns of some grim future, but children laugh and play while standing in line to swing the striking log at its bronze body. By the mountains of paper cranes left behind by the crowds at last week's anniversary, a man asks for donations. I give him $20 and sign his list of donors. He wants to know what a physicist does. The main museum displays stopped watches, melted statues, and other curiosities. I enter a side building to view survivors' drawings. Most were not artists, so many pictures look as if grade school children made them. However, children do not draw corpses by the river, babies at the breasts of dead mothers, or victims whose clothes and even skin were burned off by the nuclear flash. The 900 paper cranes, a girl with radiation-induced leukemia folded before dying, still ajar. According to folklore, she would have earned a cure if she'd made it to 1,000, so visitors fold cranes in her honor. A screen depicts the Bodhisattva of compassion on one panel and a mushroom cloud on the other, implying that compassion exists even in the midst of destruction if only we can see. I linger, wondering if I can do something, offer some assistance. Nothing comes to mind. The admission-free theater at the animation festival shows commercials for Toyota, Honda, and Sony, as if buying Japanese products could atone. My presence is futile. Fleeing the city, I escape to the station where crossing bells wail like air raid sirens. I board the train and return to the emotional safety of Osaka, where I will clamp my mouth shut when a bearded Los Alamos scientist raises his voice to expound that America must have the will to use nuclear weapons again to a group of shocked Japanese. Most attendees don't go to Hiroshima. The few who do never see the survivors' paintings. Still, it's not that simple. At Himeji, between Hiroshima and Osaka, I saw the White Crane Castle's secret rooms. If defeated, the defenders were to hide inside and then burst out in a suicidal attack to slaughter as many victors as possible. That mindset gave us Pearl Harbor and the rape of Nanjing. So yes, I would have done anything to end the war once and for all if I had been Harry Truman. I just wish the world could be different somehow. The Enola Gay lies in pieces in a Washington museum, while beside a shattered dome, someone contemplates knowledge's misuse and mourns the victims of humanity's folly. Much later, I wonder whether we can only find peace within our hearts. Can you hear the end of war?
Wow, thank you. So powerful. And on the 77th anniversary of the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and Enola Gay, named after the pilot's mother, who apparently wasn't very happy about that, and purely definitely understandable. But thank you. Thank you. Very, very timely and very, very moving. I'm going to ask my Brooklyn sister, Cindy, to read next. She always reads something great. No pressure, Sin, because I know she was like trying to work out what she was going to read, make sure it was kick-ass as it normally is.
Okay. This has been an amazing reading, very inspiring. The features, the open mic as wow. This poem is a prose poem, very old like me, and I've been revising it for a workshop. It's called On My Not So Sullen Craft, and the title, you may know, was taken from Dylan Thomas's In My Craft and Sullen Art, although I don't mention Dylan Thomas at all in the poem. I mention everyone else. Sculpted from chunks of metal and bits of raw bone, slow baked in a kiln of hyperbole and passion, the first wail of a poem, as pure and greedy as a baby, and I was there at the moment of conception. Soon it will suck its tiny red thumb and stamp its little pink feet. Every poem is a finger, an oyster, a pot of strong cappuccino, a bowl of maraschino cherries. I have taken mouthfuls of it, gorged myself on sonnets, immersed myself in a waterfall of words, an orgy of onomatopoeia. Oh, I love poetry, like Walt tended the flesh of soldiers and Emily, her garden. Like Blake was enamored with the chimneys of London and Poe, the gutter. I want to write a poem as tall as the Empire State Building or the Q1. I want to finally win a pushcart prize. with quill to the grindstone, vodka in the flask, and my own strain of melancholic joy. I will pull strands of idiom and lingo like multicolored scarves out of my poetic pocket in the abracadabra of midnight. I will drive my boot whip fast into the heart of it. I will pick up my fine-lined, black-inked rollerball pen in one hand and in the other a scalpel to make a few quick incisions. I'll sign it, seal it, lick it around the edges, and mail it to the world so everyone will know my soul. But first, my darlings, I will give this newborn poem to you.
Wow, thank you. Obviously retaining the title of Badass Poet. How can I pick a line? Every poem is an oyster, an orgy of onomatopoeia, too much in there to pick out all of the things I love. Thank you. And we have our final person for open mic. It's not the same if we don't have Bob reporting from his kitchen on something amazing, be it information or a great t-shirt that he often will pop up in. Whether we look at where the dishcloth has moved in the background, whether it's closer to the pots or further away from the pots. It's my Sunday here in Australia, and I like to hear what Bob's got to say and carry it with me for my Sunday. So I hope you will carry it with you for your Saturday night, wherever it is that he comes up with. So Bob, it's over to you. Final word.
Information. It'll be information, of course.
No, it won't be information.
Oh,
well, everything is information, actually. But okay, this is very old, and it's hard following Cindy, who did very well. The instant in which the target becomes the stadium, and your arrow flowers in its flight that now will never end, but roars and roars and roars. And the hats are thrown into the air, and you are given the ears wrapped up in a piece of blue silk that turns out to be the sky when it is viewed carefully in the mirror.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for ending open mic on such a beautiful note. I really love what you do with your work. It's amazing. So thank you. Thank you, Bob. And back to Mark to close the show.
Well, what a show this was today, and all those open mics and all those wonderful open mics. But first, I'd like to thank Kristen Sanders and Carrie Chappell, and of course Karina Van Burkum, who was here with me, and we're about to have dinner together actually. But before we do that, I'm gonna bring the tone down seriously, and this is a tiny little poem that I wrote called Dancing Waterbug. Descendant, the evening tide returns. The night air is fresh, a brief show of flowers, but the water holds the radiance. And I thank you, my friends, for a wonderful show. Our next show, in fact, is on August 20. Is that right, Cassandra?
Yeah. I guess so. I thought, yeah.
Just double check for a second.
Yeah.
It's, yes, August 20. Larissa Schmeiler and Annie Finch will guide us through the abortion anthology that they put together. And it will be featuring Molly Peacock, Marge Piercy, Carol Muskie-Dukes, and Farideh Mustafi, who will be coming in from Tehran. So please join us for that.
And for the week after, because it's going to be Mark's birthday show. So Google some Mark poems, because we're hoping to have an open mic of some poems. You can read your own and then read one from Mark. So that's going to be fun. Bring party hats and party whistles. Mark.
Love you guys. Take care. I'm off to schnitzel and tater tots. So I'll see you guys soon, but lots of love and poetry. Thanks so much. Cheers.
See you soon, everyone. I missed you. I love you. Bye.